That's better than being bored, right?
It is.
Okay, it is 10 o'clock, which means if you have something to say today, please come up to the microphone because we are live streaming this. We want everybody to hear what you have to say, including us. And with that, we'll call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, welcome everybody. Do we have anybody here that wishes to speak at public forum? All right, we'll look to adopt the agenda. And David, you want to go over some addition?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Dave Minke, County Administrator. We have two additions. If we could add regular agenda item number 2.1, Grindstone Dam Removal Project Draft EIS. And if we could add regular agenda item number 7, Land and Zoning Advisory Meeting, the date and time. And then there's a revision on regular, it says regular agenda item 4, it's actually consent agenda item number 4. And that's just to add the personnel committee to the Commissioner Moore's reimbursement form. And then we have additional information for regular agenda item number 3, the second quarter budget report. We have 2 more lines that are proposed to be adjusted and zeroed out because those projects are complete.
I'll move with it as amended, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Ludwig, any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Look for approval of the minutes of the July 5th County Board meeting minutes and summary for publication.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the minutes of the boards and reports and correspondence, the Lessard Sam Heritage Council notification letter is all we've got.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Motion by Moore, seconded by Lovegren. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll move on to the consent agenda, which you've had in front of you for several days, so. Unless we have questions, we'll look for a.
I'll move consent.
I'll second it.
Got a motion by Ludwig, second by Lovegren to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moves us to the regular meeting. First up is the Personnel Committee report.
I can take it. Yep. We met on the 10th. And we are making the following recommendations. An IT department approve the updated policy language for personnel policy section 17, which is the rules regarding the electronic communications resources. Health and Human Services, we acknowledge the retirement of adult mental health social worker Sherry Fleslin effective November 17th, 2023, and approve backfill of that position and any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. We acknowledge the resignation of eligibility worker Melanie Christie effective June 22nd, 2022. Approve the promotion of Karen Jansen from case aide at $24.80 an hour to eligibility worker at $26.16 an hour effective July 24th, 2020. Approve backfill of case aide positions and any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotional lateral transfer The K-State position is a grade 5 with a minimum starting salary of 1973. Those all kind of went together there, if you saw that. Acknowledge a resignation of eligibility worker Scarlett Oldquist effective July 14th. 2023 and approve the backfill of that position or any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. Approve backfill of open office support specialist position vacated in June. Position is a grade 2 with a minimum starting at 1656. Sheriff's Office dispatch, acknowledge the resignation of part-time dispatcher Jenny McLean effective August 31st, 2023. Approve the backfill of the position and any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. You might recognize her. She resigned already, but stayed on as part-time, was going to stop, and then but she kept working just to help out. So she's been a great employee, but now she's finally moving on. Acknowledge the resignation of part-time dispatcher Carla Pankow effective August 9th, 2023. Approve backfill of the position and any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. In the Sheriff's Office jail, acknowledge the resignation of Corrections Officer Brandon Jansen effective July 5th, 2023. Ratify the termination of part-time probationary officers Kayla McKinney effective June 15th, 2023. Approve backfill of part-time and full-time correction officers positions and any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. And I will move those, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
Been a motion by Ludwig, seconded by Moore. Any discussion or question?
I just have a quick question for Becky.
Yeah.
How many years was Sherry here? I know she's been a long time.
35.
Nice.
Gosh,
It's been a long time. Thank you.
any other questions? Yep.
Just one other thing, and this isn't about the motion or anything, but if you do look at the personnel committee, Jackie's been doing, she just started this last month. So there's like a recruitment update. So it's a real cool little chart here, and it says open positions. She's got it listed kind of where they are, and then it says new hires and then separations. So we actually got 7 new hires and 4 separations. So we are trending better than we're gaining more than we're losing. So I really appreciate it. And it's something that, you know, you guys can look at, or anybody can look at real quick and easy, see where we need people and then where we've lost a few, and then where we're hiring. So it's just kind of a cool little thing to look at real easy. So thank you, Jackie, for doing that.
And for the interviews also.
Yes, yeah, yep. Been working on them, so.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Hi.
Opposed? We'll move on to awarding of contract 2303.
So we opened bids last week. On this year's paving projects, we're gonna be in the Hinckley area for here, so. Had 3 bidders and would recommend awarding to Northland Constructors out of Duluth for $4,856,203.82. It's about 5% over, which is a pretty good bid in this environment. And we'll probably make that up on some of the items in the project. And it's also good to get some more competition. We haven't had them before.
Right,
They're a pretty big outfit out of Duluth, and so I'm confident they'll do a good job, but it's kind of a surprise, you know, I don't know, nobody's had them in 35 years that we know of, so kind of nice to get a new contractor in. Any questions? We've got, I said, it's about 15 miles of work in the Hinckley area. We're gonna try to fix that swamp south, you know. That's gonna be getting some rerouted traffic when they replace this next year in Hinckley, north of Hinckley.
Is that where there's those big?
Yep. So we'll see if we can fix that. We'll give her another try. It's about a 1/4 mile project. We're paving 18 from 61 across the tracks there all the way out to Caneva County. 17 north of 18 for a couple miles, kind of a bad stretch there. And then south of 18 on 17, there's a little gap in there between the railroad tracks and the rest of the pavement. So that way we don't have to blade that stretch and get stuck on the tracks. And, you know, sounds like there might be more trains coming here. So it'll just make it a little safer for our maintenance. So that's kind of what we got going on right now. We got the trail project and shoulder widening in Pine City probably starting here in the next couple of weeks. We'll be opening bids on the 9 bridge in August next month. And we've got the Sturgeon Island Bridge project probably this fall. Haven't got a date pinned down on that. And then we have,
it was staked. It is staked.
yeah, we're working with some of the landowners, kind of address some of their concerns. And then,
Gonna be covered.
well, it's designed to take a cover. So that's been the big topic. That's the best question we've had, you know, is it going to be covered? Well, it's, you know, it's up to the township because the state doesn't cover those costs.
Yeah.
So, you know, township board changes every 2 years. So they got a different idea every 2 years. And so it's kind of up to them, but it'll be all set for it, you know, and with the price of lumber now, it could be a lot of money.
Yeah, so we just put it up so they have
We build it, it's ready to go. There's been some questions about fishing and that, and it's like, you know, people fish off the bridges by the Snake River. People fish off a lot of the bridges. It's not, you know, signed for that. It's not, you know, legal in a sense, but you know, there's a lot of people worried about being able to fish off it, but you know, that's up to them. You know, it's just pedestrians.
I wouldn't think there's very high traffic count.
No, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's hardly any cars and, you know, so that's been an issue with that project. What else do we have going on? That's about it.
Do you know when they're gonna start on the projects in Hinkley?
Usually it's about a month out, so.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
do you think it's this, because you did so much work here is why you got some other bids on it, or is it?
Well, you either bid really early when everybody's looking for work this year, or you kind of bid now where people are filling out their schedule for the fall. And I know Knife River wanted the project. But Northland, they gave us, you know, kind of the prices, you know, a couple of the projects were actually under bid and then a couple of projects were a little older. So I think we kind of know where we're at as far as paving costs, bridge construction, some of that. So.
things kind of leveled out now.
Yeah, I think so. And we got some good news with funding. Maybe probably be about a 10% increase for us next year with the changes that the legislature made. Now, that's almost always wrong what they tell us, but it'll be more. So, so more is better.
Yeah.
So.
Mr. Chair, yeah, the status in Willow with the box.
Oh, yeah, forgot about them. Yeah, so we got 2 other box culvert projects. I believe they want to be coming in here in the next few weeks, but I'll pin that down. We'll get that information out to the city. But yeah, so there's a 25 bridge replacement out southeast of Duxbury. I don't know if you've got calls on that, Commissioner Lovren. Okay. You, I don't know if you have. And then the Willow River. So those are box culvert projects that they'll come in and they'll start one, get that set, and then they'll go to the next one. So they'll be working on both of them at the same time.
I know it's always hard to.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Always hard.
Kind of a combined area out there.
Yeah, but it's always hard to estimate when you dig, but what are your thoughts? Just like a ballpark of how long the highway be closed, do you think?
There, I would say probably at least a month. And so we'll route them around on that city street, but we'll have a weight restriction. Try to send the trucks, give them some advance notice and they can take the freeway. So we can't detour them on the freeway, but we can say, you know, road closed ahead up in Sturgeon Lake. Sure. So yeah, we'll have a lot going on here. We haven't really gotten started, but We're used to kind of maybe getting one in the fall because that's just the way our system operates with the staff we got, and it seems to work out well, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
So do you need?
Need a,
I need a motion for wording of the contract.
I'll move that, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that.
Motion by Ludwig, second by Lovegren. Any more questions or comments? Not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Hinkley Dam, right? We'll move on to the Hinkley Dam project. Some of us that have been on the board a while kind of remember this from a few years ago. I believe we supported the city of Hinkley in their quest to keep the dam in place. And so you want to give us the latest?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The county has been supportive of the city of Hinckley's efforts to have the dam either replaced or repaired in the past. We'd like to request that support again by submitting the resolution 2919-21 with a letter of support to do no action and leave the dam in place as part of the public comment period for the draft EIS. So yeah, they are doing the environment impact study, and it looks like the choices are to remove it and let it naturally fall into place, leave it as is, knowing that it is in poor condition, or remove it and then bump out the path just a little bit in one direction. So those are the three choices that they've had. They do know and note that it will change the aquatic management area. So some of that wetlands that are, habitat for waterfowl breeding. Removal of the dam may allow more fish from further downstream to repopulate back up. But there's so much that could be lost otherwise. And the city of Hinckley has just always used that as a place of recreation and enjoy. They put in a bunch of money for the road there, including getting a DNR grant to put the road in. So yeah, we just like to request the support again.
Thank you. I mean, it's a nice area. You've done a nice job at the city of making it a nice place. So
Yeah.
It's fun seeing people down there.
Yes, it is. And having the actual, paved road compared to what it was has made a big difference. So, yeah.
So would we be doing a whole new resolution on this?
I think, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lovren, I think if you just authorized a letter, I could work with Leah to draft a letter of support based off of the original resolution as well as the EIS draft that's out there and get that in by the 25th of July.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to do a letter.
I got a couple more questions, Mr. Chair. So, one option. Does the city have any, I know you have one option, keep it. Is there any, do you have like a rapids that would hold it? Like they did at.
So I researched that a little bit and talked to the DNR and they looked at it, but there's not enough space where the current dam is to do it. And if they backed it up some, it would end up flooding further up in other people's land that they don't currently have rights to. So yeah, that was one of the hopefuls for the city was, a fish ladder or a rock dam like Will River had.
Do you have another one?
Would have been a follow-up to that, so.
I'll make a
we
motion.
got a motion from Lovegren
I'll second.
and a second by Moore to write a letter and reaffirm our original resolution to support the city of Hinckley. Is that what you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you very much, Bill. Yeah.
Very much.
And congratulations on your new position.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, let's see, second quarter budget report.
Ryan is going to throw up some slides. Halfway through the year, the short answer is everything looks as we expected, and there are no significant concerns. The first graph just shows the revenue and expenditures in the general health and human services, road and bridge, and then the total overall. The amount collected looks a little higher perhaps than usual. Road and bridge is driving that a little bit. And then in the general fund, there are some ARPA funds. The way the accountants look at it is all the ARPA money that is not literally spent counts as a 2023 revenue. So we don't budget that as a revenue because we already got the money, but it skews the graph a little bit. And it'll show up a little more pronounced in the next chart. So this just focuses on the revenue in the departments in the general fund. And my only conclusion is that revenues at the department level are variable year to year to year. So you can't get too excited with ups and downs. But if you look at the far right on the general fund total, that 2023 number, the purplish line, you can see how that's really higher than the historical. That really is being driven by the ARPA accounting thing. So otherwise, everything looks about where it should. The jail looks really high on the revenue. So 2 points. One, jail revenues in the last 5-6 years have been tremendously ratcheted down. So it's not a whole lot of money anymore. And the high number right now is being driven by the canteen revenue, which is not useful for any other purpose than for the canteen purposes. So it's not like it creates spendable money for the county. The next chart. These are the expenditures in the general fund. The recorder obviously is blowing everybody out of the water. At this point, that's the tax and CAMA system. It's not a concern because we had budgeted for that. It comes out of the recorder technology and recorder compliance funds. Otherwise, everything looks about where it should. The next chart is where we overlay the historical average versus the current year. So that black line is the 4-year average. And the thing that I noticed when I look at this chart is we are a little bit tighter this year than maybe we typically are in the past, with the current year being at or above the average. Usually we have a little more variability. Some departments are above, some are low. This year, everybody is trending pretty close to at or above the historical average, but nobody is a concern. I think we're gonna make budget at the end of the year. It's going to be very close. We're not going to add much to the fund balance. But that's, if we do good budgeting, we should come out at 0. And then the last graph just digs a little bit deeper into health and human services. Income maintenance, social services, and public health are the major functional areas, and everything is trending right about where it should at this point in the year. So no concerns or surprises. Other questions?
Yeah.
So remember our discussion on Bruno solid waste? That was like 100.
On what, Matt?
On Bruno, remember that?
Yeah.
Is that the driver on the over there? I think they're just overall on solid waste.
I don't know offhand. I can check that out.
And I don't remember, we were gonna revisit that in a few months. 6 months. 6 months or something.
Yeah, I think we were going to revisit that as part of the budget process because I think the direction was to hold what we got for the rest of this year and then look at 2024.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
So the next piece is the ARPA funding. And if you go to your agenda additions, very last page is the most updated chart. And it's a landscape versus a portrait. If that helps to keep it straight, it's this one here, this Excel spreadsheet. And so on the ARPA funds, we have 5 of those projects that I think we can close out. 2 of them were a little bit over the estimate and 3 of them were a little bit under the estimate. And so the jail and body cameras came out $2,250 above the estimate. The radios were $50 or $55 above the estimate. The Sturgeon Lake Stormwater Study was $192 under the estimate. The broadband consultant, $565 under the estimate. And the sheriff's office masks were $1,168 under the estimate. So if you wanted to make a motion to make those adjustments, we would just zero those out then, and the allocation would match the expenditure and the remaining would be zero. That reduces the remaining funds by $380 in total, but it still leaves about $14,452 unallocated. Questions on that, on those changes?
Does it matter that $300 if we do that now, if we do it at budget time?
If you do it,
Easier bookkeeping to do it now?
for me, it's easier bookkeeping to do it now,
Okay.
because I'm thinking at the next iteration, I'm gonna actually take all of the projects that are done.
Take their
And
lines up.
I'll segregate those as being done so that they get presented as finished. And then come the end of the year, right, that would be the third quarter, then come the end of the year, I probably wouldn't continue to report those, and it would make the remaining stuff a little easier to focus on. Yep.
Makes sense. So if somebody would want to make that motion, it would probably be in order.
I will make that motion.
I can second.
Got a motion by Lovegren, seconded by Waldman. Is there any discussion on that? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now,
And Mr. Chair,
Well-
if I could just ask if there's any other thoughts or comments on the ARPA spending. Now there can be conversation or questions on those. I don't, if you ask a detailed question on the project, I might not know it off the top of my head, but if there's things you're interested in, certainly this is an opportunity to have that conversation. And if not, we'll move to the sales tax. And sales tax receipts through lost my place. I think through the end of April, we're tracking just a little bit above last year. Yeah, through April, they were 7% or 7.4% above the same period a year ago. So that the sales tax money is still, I guess, on track. So Mark is not having to adjust his project schedules because of lack of collections. And we've been treating this kind of as a pay as you go for the projects. And so that's, I guess that's the only important piece is we're not having to modify any of the project schedules.
hopefully the increase is keeping up with the inflationary increases of construction.
But the total collection is fixed.
Right,
So whatever we hit, the dollar amount will be the dollar amount.
but as individual years projects come up, we like to keep those in line with what we've collected.
So that is, in a nutshell, the second quarter financial update.
Thank you. Very helpful. We'll move on then to the cannabis law update.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. So I'm going to talk about cannabis legalization and its intersection with Pine County. So I'll start somewhat humorous, but there's a lot of viewpoints on cannabis legalization. Obviously, there's some people that are very pro legalization, and I know we probably all know somebody that's like their entire life. And then you have people on the other side of the spectrum who think that the Minnesota's circling the drain and we've all lost our minds. And then there are people like that little guy up in the corner that's probably represents me. I don't understand any of this, or I get it and I don't get it at the same time. So the point I want to make is there's obviously lots of viewpoints, but the reality is that it's here, it's law. It's going to be law on August 1st is when it's effective for the most part. So we have to talk about it, and what is Pine County's role in all this? So my goal here is what I'm going to do is I'll give you just kind of a broad overview of what the law is about. And then we'll get into the weeds, no pun intended, of this. How this impacts Pine County. So again, I'm going to start broad and then we're going to go very specific. Now, the bill itself is 321 pages. This is a massive bill and it covers a variety of things. We'll discuss that in a minute. As I mentioned, for the most part, it's effective August 1st, so just about 2 weeks from now. And it's very comprehensive. And when I say it's comprehensive, it addresses all these things. This is not an exhaustive list. There are other things that are addressed within this, but obviously legalization, limitations. This bill creates a whole new state agency, Office of Cannabis Management, puts in millions of dollars into this agency that's going to be responsible for a lot of interactions with local jurisdictions, with licensing, with product testing. So there's going to be a lot involved with that. There's an advisory council. Criminal law and penalties, those have changed significantly. There's going to be expungements. Bill discusses tribal jurisdiction, substance abuse, labor standards, taxes, local options, and other things. There are a lot of things on this list that any one of these I could spend an hour on. My focus in the red is going to be local options. And this will intersect with some of these other topics too, and we'll discuss that as well. And when I say options, I'm not here to give recommendations, but I'm here to just kind of tell you as an advisor, this is what you're looking at. This might be something that be a good discussion topic for a future committee of the whole meeting. So again, broad overview. I went to a training with the person that actually authored this bill. And I'm not the legislature, but the person when the legislature needs a bill, they go to that person and say, make it reality, write it up for us. And I borrowed this slide from him. And I thought this was interesting because it opened my eyes just a little bit, because as a chief prosecutor in the county, my focus, of course, is on public safety. And I look at the accessibility to minors, drug treatment aspects. And so that's been my lens on viewing this bill. And I think Private Sheriff is probably similar as well. And I have our own opinions about the bill, but that's how I viewed it. There's a bigger picture to this though. And I think that's what this slide was trying to impress on people, is that you have a political party that has the governorship, House and Senate. They want to legalize marijuana. And to do this, they have to balance a lot of policy considerations. And so you see a lot of things that are opposed to each other. For instance, there's, what's the role of big marijuana here? There's concerns that medical marijuana, there's two suppliers. So there's like a duopoly. I think that's what it's called, but it runs like all the supplies. So they want more people involved. So they've got to look at big marijuana, they've got to look at small business. And there's some relationship to the county with that. They have to look at barriers to entry. They have to look at impact on communities, safety of products. Another policy that he didn't have in the slide, but state versus local. And you're going to see some of that in here. There's going to be local limitations. So one of the things he mentioned, of course, with economically, he said that this industry is a very creative industry. It's a very adaptable, very fast moving industry. That's kind of struck a bell in my mind. I was thinking of a personal experience where there's a brewery up in Duluth that I went to, and if you remember last year, July 1st of 2022, they legalized edibles. So you can make marijuana food, marijuana beverages up to 5 milligrams. Part of that bill included breweries that allowed breweries to actually do that. And so there was a brewery that I always went up to Duluth. I was up there in January and saw their list of beers. And then on the corner was a THC drink and a CBD drink. And this brewery had already started making these drinks. A month later, I go back up and suddenly these drinks are more prominent on the list, and they've tripled their product lines. They have 3 THC brands, they have CBD brands, and then they brewed a THC drink that you can only consume on premises too. A month or two later, I come back and they've actually opened a lounge in a building next door. And the entire lounge has got their THC products. They have a line of edibles. Everything's beautifully packaged. And, They have other drinks available too. And so this, you can just see this is growing. And I was the only person in the lounge at that time. And 2 weeks ago, I was back in Duluth. I said, okay, I'm gonna stop in and look in that lounge. Walked in, the lounge was packed. And it was people from, 21 years old all the way up into their 70s. Three women walked in. They must have been in their late 60s, early 70s. And they walked up to the bar and said, we've never had marijuana before. Where do we start?
It's time to try it.
So it was just an interesting point that there is a, economic development consideration here. And so I think my point on that is that there's a lot of policy issues that go into this, and this is quite an industry. So just a thought for how, maybe Pine County can fit into this somehow. So a very high level, what does legalization really mean? So a person 21 or older may use, possess, or transport cannabis paraphernalia. You may possess up to 2 ounces or less of cannabis flower in a public place. So if you read those two together, that basically means that a person can consume marijuana in a public place.
Yeah.
And Minnesota is the 23rd state to legalize marijuana. We're only one of 4 states that allows public use consumption. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a second. Allows you to possess 2 pounds or less of cannabis flower in your residence. You can possess or transport up to 8 grams or less of adult use cannabis concentrate. Now, when we say legalization, this is the scope of it. When you start getting above this, you're going to either need licensing or you're committing felonies or gross misdemeanors. So there's still criminal penalties possible. You may possess or transport edible products infused with a total of 800 milligrams or less of THC. You can give away a cannabis flower and products in an amount that's legal for another person to possess. But if you sell it, then you're in a licensing violation and possibly a criminal penalty as well. You can use cannabis flower and products in private areas. And at your residence, you can cultivate up to 8 cannabis plants, 4 or fewer have maybe mature flowering plants. Yeah, I laughed at that too. So that's but that's based, at a very high level. That's what legalization is from a personal level.
Increase the consumption in a public place. If a town hall or a city park says we don't allow alcohol or cannabis,
Mhm.
I don't. Can they do that?
Yep.
The public.
We will, and yep, we'll get to that. That's going to be in the local options section. So as of August 1st, stole some of this from an article I read. I thought this was laid out nicely, even though it reads like a bad children's book. Like, can you smoke on a sidewalk? Yes. Outside a bar, restaurant, yes. Outside in public, yes. So I put asterisks on that. That's relates to Steve's question here. In indoor public places, no, you cannot, because anywhere the Clean Indoor Act applies, it also applies to marijuana. You can't smoke in transportation vehicles, facilities, so you can't get out on a Greyhound bus and light one up in the bus station. In workplaces, no. In your vehicle while you're traveling, no, you cannot smoke, use marijuana. Any location where a minor could inhale vapors, smoke, aerosols, you cannot use it. Inside rental units, maybe, depends on the landlord. And it might even depend on some of the federal funding on some of these housing projects, but maybe on that one. Can you smoke in a public school or charter school or any of its facilities? No, you can't.
So Reese, the casino, they have their indoor smoking area.
Mhm.
Could people go in there and smoke it because they don't have the Clean Air Act in that one part of the casino?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, because then I don't know how we'll talk about tribes.
Yeah. it's
Intersect.
different.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Mhm.
So one other quick question. So like if you have a minor in your home, technically you shouldn't use it there then, right?
Yeah, technically you shouldn't, but yeah.
But that's just smoke where there's a minor. You could do gummies where there's a minor because they can't
Good.
smell the smoke.
Yep, it's yeah, vapor, smoke or aerosol.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Yeah, and the whole where the minor could inhale, I mean, I don't know how that's really enforced, but I mentioned that we're one of 4 states that allows public use consumption. One of them, the other ones is New York. Last summer I was in New York City with my family and could smell it everywhere. I mean, we walked around the streets and then tried to explain what that smell was to our kids, and people smoke a plant and they get for an altered state, and so they were able to identify the smell of marijuana by the end of our trip. It's a foreign experience to them, fortunately. Now, I mentioned earlier there's the policy of large marijuana versus entry points and small businesses. And so what the Office of Cannabis Management does, it's going to license businesses, and there's 16 licenses here. Cannabis cultivator, manufacturer, there's various retailers, transporter. Some of these are vertically integrated. It's kind of a complicated spreadsheet. If you see how they integrate with each other. But so, for example, if you're a lower potency hemp edible manufacturer, you can also be a lower potency hemp edible retailer. That's vertical integration. Some of these licenses, you can only have that license and you can't have another. And I'm going to bring this up because there's some interplay into the county with this when we have to register cannabis businesses. So again, the idea here is let's get more small businesses involved in doing this and allow more entry points for, citizens who have an interest in doing something with this to get a license and go forward with a business. So before I get into specifics, after looking at a lot of this and going to presentations about this law, this quote came up for me. This is a guy I haven't thought about, fortunately, for many years, but this quote of known knowns and known unknowns, because there's a lot of known unknowns here and a lot of unknown unknowns. And though this is a comprehensive bill, the person who authored the bill basically admitted that we don't know how it's going to work. We're going to author it, we're going to throw it out there and see how things look in a year. They don't know. All right, so now that I've covered kind of the high level of this bill, I'm going to cover specifically where it's intersected with Pine County and what our local options are. So we'll start with local regulation don'ts. So we cannot prohibit the possession, transportation, or use of cannabis. And the bill author said that the reason for that was they didn't want to create a cannabis desert, is the phrase he used. And
Like the dry counties in Tennessee.
exactly, yeah. Yeah, and they said that they pointed at Colorado. So I don't know if it's still like this in Colorado, but the original bill allowed opt-outs for counties in Colorado. And so a number of counties opted out, and he claimed that this actually created black markets within the opt-out counties. And so what they wanted to make sure was that this is that state versus local tension. They wanted to make sure that local jurisdictions could not prohibit possession, transportation, or use of cannabis. Local jurisdiction cannot prohibit the establishment of a licensed cannabis business. So if it's licensed through this office, the county can't come in and say, well, we don't want this business here. I put a little asterisk on that. That has to do with registration. We'll talk about that in a minute. And a county may not pass or impose a cannabis specific tax. And we'll talk about taxes too in a few minutes. So what can a local local jurisdiction do? You may adopt reasonable restrictions on time, place, and manner of operation of cannabis businesses. And the Office of Cannabis Management, under statute, under that bill, is supposed to work with local jurisdictions and put on a model ordinance. A cannabis business cannot be licensed if it doesn't meet local zoning requirements or ordinances. So that's kind of that asterisk I was talking about earlier with respect to the cannabis business comes in here. If they don't meet zoning, then they can't be licensed, can't be registered in the county, and so they can't operate. The county may prohibit the operation of a cannabis business within 1,000 feet of a school or 500 feet of a daycare, residential treatment facility, or an attraction with a public park used by minors. More local regulation options. The county may, by ordinance, limit the number of licensed retailers to no fewer than one registration for every 12,500 residents. So that's basically a floor. I don't know how that works with 30,000 people. I think that's maybe 3 if you round up, but. So that's basically the threshold is, if you want to regulate, and these are just retailers. I've made a distinction between cannabis businesses, that's the general category, and cannabis retailers. So no fewer than one of every 12,500. You have to do that by ordinance. And that's interesting because that applies to the county areas. So if that is in play, and we have 3 and the city of Hinckley wants to have one, that doesn't limit the city of Hinckley from having a cannabis retailer. But the law says that a city of Hinckley could also say no to a cannabis retailer if we have that threshold and we've already met our requirement. Kind of an interesting interplay between county and the city. Statute says that if local government has a complaint about a cannabis or hemp business in the jurisdiction, those complaints receive priority for inspection and such. So they're supposed to be moved up to the top of the pile if we make a complaint, and they're supposed to come and inspect and take a look at that business.
Who does the inspection? Public health or the sheriff's office or?
No, so that would be, I think it's the Office of Cannabis
Action.
Management, yeah, and they'll have inspectors. There is a local government interplay in that we have to do compliance checks. And I imagine there's probably some zoning aspects too. And that, so we'll probably get some complaints that way and then bump it up.
Reese, back a couple slides, I'm sorry. You had talked about there could be rules passed or laws passed that you can't be so far within a school. Who would we do that, or would each local district do that?
I would say it would be both.
Okay.
So the cities would have to do it if they wanted to. And then the county would have to do that.
Okay, thanks.
So more local regulation dues. So this county is required to register retailers. And so there's initial fee up to $500. So you have to set a fee schedule, up to $1,000 for renewals. And these registrations are issued if the criteria is met. There's specific statutory criteria that the local jurisdiction has to follow. And the local jurisdiction also has to do compliance checks, much like alcohol. I think there's a minimum 1 to 2 a year that the sheriff's office would have to do, you know, using maybe a teenager to go in and try to buy something from a retailer. Jurisdiction may suspend or cancel a registration for noncompliance with statute or as a threat to public health or safety. When that happens, the registration is canceled for up to 30 days, and then the Office of Cannabis Management must inspect and intercede on that. They don't call this a license like they do with alcohol. They call it a registration. They didn't want the local jurisdictions to actually have the power to cancel a business. Basically, it puts a temporary hold on them. But if a business doesn't have that local registration, they cannot operate. And if they do operate, it's a civil penalty of up to $2,000. So that's something that has to be put in place too, once these businesses start being licensed.
Would that fall underneath an ordinance or a zoning policy? Or how would you put the rules in ordinance?
That might be. Yeah, I'm not sure because it doesn't specify which department in the statute either. It just says local government.
They only refer to zoning a couple of times in there, right?
Yeah, but if it's like alcohol, it might go through the assessor's office now too.
Yeah.
So local jurisdictions, this is an asterisk that I had on an earlier slide. We cannot prohibit cannabis businesses, but they are allowing for a local interim ban. And this is something that you're allowed to pass an ordinance regulating, restricting, and prohibiting cannabis businesses until January 1st of 2025. And the purpose for doing that is to conduct a study and then consider what type of reasonable restrictions that you put into place.
See how much they changed the state statute after their year of what's going on.
Right. Yeah. The thing about this, though, is that the Office of Cannabis Management is probably not going to be licensing people for about a year or a year and a half is their prediction. So even if you pass this ban, we won't have any licensing business anyways, I'm guessing. So, but again, this is an option to consider. There's something in the statute called a cannabis event. So this is, I'm guessing people gather and eat edibles and brownies and smoke and things like that, and probably have entertainment, but it's a maximum of 4 days and they have to get a local permit and license. So that might be something that would probably be done by ordinance. And last but not least, you may adopt a petty misdemeanor ordinance prohibiting cannabis use in public. And so they've basically given this control to local governments. Again, it's public use is legal unless local jurisdiction says no. And that would be, I'm guessing that's ought to be a county, and then I'm guessing the individual cities would have to adopt such an ordinance. So that's something to consider maybe again for a committee of the whole, and there are examples of this because other cities and jurisdictions are starting to move on this as well. And so there's already some language written for that if you're interested in that. All right, so talk about the fun part of it, taxes. So state sales tax applies to retailers, general local sales taxes also apply. And then on top of all this, the state has added a 10% gross receipts tax, GRT, on all retail sales. Local jurisdictions, I mentioned this earlier, are prohibited from imposing a cannabis specific tax. So this is how it works. So that GRT that I talked about, 80% of it goes to the state general fund. And then 20% of that goes to the local government cannabis aid account. So with that 20%, that local government aid account, that's split in half. Half goes to the counties and then half goes to the cities. Now within the county portion, 20% is distributed equally among all the counties. And then 80% is distributed proportionally among the counties based on the number of cannabis businesses in the county as compared to all other counties. And the cities are not quite as lucky. 100% is distributed proportionally among the cities based on the number of cannabis businesses. So they don't get that automatic 20% like we do for the equal. They only get some money if they have a business. So for instance, City of Hinckley has a cannabis business, you would be counted under that distribution for proportionally. And I think the Benton County also would get a benefit from that too. We'd be counted, that business would be counted in our 80% as well.
Our cities really wouldn't get much when you compare it to like Hennepin, St. Cloud and Duluth.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is going to be a boon for large cities. So just kind of a numbers example. I looked up Department of Revenue estimates for these taxes. They predict that in 2027, the state's going to get $111 million total taxes from cannabis, and that the local government cannabis aid account is going to get $17 million. So half of 17 million is 8.5 million. So 8.5 million to the counties, 8.5 to the cities. And then 20% of 8.5 million is 1.7 million. And then you divide 1.7 million by 87, you get 19,540.
Right.
So that's the giant check that Pine County is getting for, all its social ills and dealing with the legalized marijuana. But so 19,540 bucks out of that 17 million. And then if we have a cannabis business, like you said, say there's 250 in the state and we have 3 in Pine County, we're gonna get 3 2/50ths of the remaining 6.8 million. So it sounds good at the beginning, but then you actually look at the numbers, it's not really that great. Now, the bill does appropriate funds for a number of things that may touch on local jurisdictions. So I thought I'd mention this, $10 million in 2025 for grants to local and tribal health departments. $5 million in 2025 for youth education grants. $2 million 2025 education grants for pregnant and breastfeeding individuals. There's $6 million each in 2024 and 2025 for employment and economic development. 10 million 2024, 5 million 2025 for drug recognition expert training or evaluate, but that'll go to the sheriff's office to detect some impaired driving and such. And 1.5 million each in 2024 and 2025 for treatment courts, which we don't have one of those in Pine County. So employment, law does not change anything with respect to CDL holders. That's basically dictated by federal law. And if you're using marijuana, you can't have a CDL. Public safety employees who carry a firearm cannot use marijuana. Unfortunate news for deputies, but kidding. So, but that's again dictated by federal law. Other employees not affected by the new law, and a lot of these are, you know, you'll see their county positions, safety sensitive position. Those are a lot of supervisors, managers in certain careers, peace officer, firefighter, for positions funded by a federal grant. You cannot use marijuana. For instance, my victim services advocate, that's a federal grant position, and I have to sign off on a lot of stuff where we're a drug-free workplace. So that's not affected by the law. Positions requiring testing of job applicant or employee for cannabis under state and federal law. Obviously CDL, we hit that. And then positions that involve face-to-face care, training, education, supervision, consultation, medical assistance to children and vulnerable adults, patients receiving healthcare services in certain areas. Bad news for Becky's employees. So then outside that, are there considerations where there are employees that are affected by the law? You know, is there an employment policy to consider about prohibiting the use, possession, or apparent of cannabis at work? Or even, like I said, even just like edibles, things like that. Are there changes to collective bargaining? Some contracts have deals with marijuana that said, you know, if you test positive, it's a violation, but now it's legal. So does that change any collective bargaining? Not refuse to hire an applicant simply because of positive cannabis test outside the, of course, all those positions I talked about, the non-accepted positions. Drug-Free Workplace Act still applies. That applies to federal grantees and contractors. We've got a lot of grantees here in the county. And of course, I mentioned the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act. Tribes. It's kind of an interesting part of this law is that it basically acknowledges the sovereign right of tribes to regulate the cannabis industry and makes it basically an option whether or not they want to work with Minnesota or the state government of Minnesota. And it says you may enter compacts with the state. It's not very specific on what these compacts mean, just basically to solve jurisdictional issues, things like that. They're not subject to that 10% GRT tax unless they have an agreement with the state of Minnesota, not subject to those licensings under the Office of Management, Cannabis Management without an agreement with the state of Minnesota. So a good example of this is made a lot of news is that Red Lake is beginning recreational sales on August 1st. And because they've already got, I think they had some license or medical marijuana up there. So they've got the facilities to produce it and such. And they're going to sell to tribal and non-tribal members too. And so they're getting basically a 1.5 year jump on this because our licensing scheme is not being expected to take effect until about 12 to 18 months from August 1st. And I mentioned those known unknowns. There's probably a lot more that I could have listed up here. I just thought quickly was like, what's the workload impact? I expect that for myself, we're either going to be the same or we're going to have more work. The idea that marijuana is not going to, you know, these this legalization is gonna lessen the criminals that are coming through the system is kind of a fallacy because I think in the last 6-7 years, I've had 6 felony marijuana cases out of say the 1,000, methamphetamine opiates that I deal with. Felony marijuana cases are extremely rare. And the 6 I'm thinking about came from 3 large marijuana grows, which would still be illegal under this law anyway. So I don't think it's going to impact my office anything under 42.5 grams currently is petty possession. I don't see petty misdemeanor tickets come through my office unless somebody contests it. 15 years, I've had one person contest a petty marijuana misdemeanor ticket. And it was only because the officer was a jerk to her. And it wasn't one of Jeff's guys. It was a different jurisdiction they worked at, but they just wanted to make it inconvenient. Sheriff's office, I imagine there's probably going to be more issues there because, we're going to have more people legally smoking, more people driving. The whole DWI scheme doesn't change under this law, so you can't be impaired and drive under marijuana. It's just a bit more difficult to discern what impairment is versus alcohol. Obviously, HHS, going to have them, I think, probably one of the greatest workload increases, what I expect with some of where we talk, especially public health, if they get, the grant money and the education and such. Zoning, license, I should say registration, not licensing, but, the registration scheme, there's going to be work there. What's going to happen with substance abuse among children? What's going to happen with public safety? What's going to happen with treatment needs under this law? A lot of these are known unknowns. All right, so I think I covered everything that went through. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've seen nothing in here in relation to the Department of Transportation and their requirements on the buyer's card and transporting of alcohol on highways. Was there anything in this in regards to that with the Department of Transportation and transporting, hauling on the supply side?
So and I'm assuming is that federal or state?
State.
Okay.
If you have a liquor license, you can't operate without.
Right.
Buyer's card. It has to do with the transportation supply chain.
So what I think is, so there's a cannabis transport license. And so that might be the equivalent. Don't quote me on that, but that's one of the 16 licenses I mentioned. And so there's statutory criteria with that. So somebody that's transporting commercially, especially above those personal level limits, are going to need that license.
Thank you.
Does anything, and I know there was some discussion about the sale of it, would it be regulated like alcohol so that
the city could have a municipal cannabis retailer that is allowed under the law.
okay.
Yeah, so add on to the firehouse.
So,
Yeah.
when you go to a liquor store in Superior, as an example, they sell the,
Edibles.
yeah, they sell the edibles at the liquor store. So that's not something that can just happen here. You have to have the actual license to do it, because I think it's all of them up there. I think you can buy them at the grocery store. So this is going to be more restrictive than,
It might be, yeah. I think they might have to have that retailer license to do that. Because right now, as it currently exists, I mean, you can't sell edibles or THC drinks in a liquor store. After August 1st, I believe liquor stores can add that product line, so, but they might need that retail. So we'll have to stop in at JJ's in about a year and see how that looks.
so we should probably start looking at what we're going to do with that sooner than later. With some
Yeah.
type issues.
Yeah, I think so. I worry about big events that people gather at, like the county fair, and if people are allowed to smoke and it's legal to smoke or do marijuana in public,
Get big money.
that How is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, I think the county fairgrounds are, are within Pine City. So I imagine Pine City would have to have an ordinance. I know the state fair is banning it this year, but they're leaving it open for future years. But then there's interplay of, there's a lot of kids at the county fair. But then it becomes that kind of weird enforcement angle, somebody smoking and, sheriff confronts them and they say, well, the kids are 100 feet over there and they can't smell the smoke or the vapors coming here. And so they can cause troubles that way.
So take kids with you when you go to confront them, Jeff.
That's a good. Have the child posse, right?
Yeah.
Thanks, Reese. I'm just slightly either more confused or less confused.
Mr. Chair, just before we maybe move on, I see there's like 3 things that you folks can consider. If you're interested. One is the zoning related piece. Do you want to limit how close to a school? Do you want to do other zoning type restrictions? There's the public use generally. Do you want to do anything about the public use of marijuana, which you can prohibit as a local government? And then there is the provision for limiting the total number to not fewer than 1 per 12,500. And so if you want additional conversation or information or options on any of those, we can certainly, find information, because as Reese noted, there are some jurisdictions that are moving forward with some of those items. And then the event piece may be another thing, because and I'm going to look to the sheriff, because I haven't heard of any large events that have been issues recently, but I remember some time ago, the county doesn't have a strong regulation of large events. And so if that were a concern, that would be something that could require some work as well.
So, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So it's gonna be, what, 18 months before do they even have the licenses available? Or is it gonna be wait till they come in and they're, how's it, I mean, do we wait as a county to see what the demand is gonna be, or do we get ahead of it?
Well,
I think we get ahead of it because
Yeah, I say we get ahead of it, but
part of it kicks in already, right? I mean, the ability to not be to smoke marijuana now is legal.
Yeah.
So,
I'm just talking the issues that Dave's talking about.
yeah, the license, but there's a lot of other things that the public use part, and the sheriff's raising his hand back there.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I would ask you guys to consider eliminating as much of the gray area for my people as you can. And if we can do that through ordinances that we can actually enforce, would be great. Because right now we're still spinning with some of the other changes, trying to figure out what happened August 1st to some of our normal processes. And I don't have real solid answers for that, other than we'll figure it out. We cite people and it gets dismissed later because it was inappropriate, and we'll have to deal with that. But unfortunately, there's a lot of that gray right now with my agency. So anything you guys can do at a county level that would add some, not asking that we have to enforce stuff or get to enforce stuff, but the knowledge that we can enforce stuff. So, I think we do a really good job of doing some of that discretionary enforcement where the problems are, without some clear guidance from the county on what we want to allow or what we want to enforce. That puts a lot more unknowns in where we stand. So that would be my ask, as we consider moving forward on some of these sooner than later, to add some clear guidance on what you guys as a board, public as well as you, would expect from us. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
just to circle back, Matt, to your question, I think the hazard with waiting is if you get more registrants than you want, it's terribly hard to take those away, right? Once they exist. or once somebody sets up shop right next to the school, you're gonna pass an ordinance that's gonna require them to move, which probably costs money.
Yeah, I was just looking at the thing, we have X amount of licenses that we have to issue,
We don't, the county will not issue license.
registrations, we have to have registrations, but so, which is 2 or 3. Depends on how you do the math, it has to be
That-
29,000 people, and I divide it by 12.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
Reese, that's an option, right?
Mhm.
We want to limit the registrants in Pine County. We have to do that through.
And we can't go no fewer than 1
Right.
out of 12, so we have to have 2 for sure.
But we could say we only allow 10.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, I was thinking,
allow one in every township or something, every municipality and.
that's the only one that was hanging me up. The
Yeah.
public use one is, we can handle that. Stuff. And the other one, I don't know if that's gonna be a zoning or. I don't know how we do that, because we're gonna have to bring zoning in.
Well, I think what we need to do is to have the sheriff and Reese come up with some reasonable options for us. Have zoning come up with some ideas. Because we could sit here until Thanksgiving and probably still be hashing over the possibilities. Because there's so many known unknowns. But if I would work better if I had a suggested list of things that here's what we'd like to see the county board do. And then we can choose to or not choose to, but I think the zoning thing seems to be something that zoning, that's what they do.
That'll be easy.
They could craft up something and we could give them some feedback after we see something that says, whatever we think is reasonable for amounts of places of sale. I don't know what's reasonable.
Well, any ordinance they do, we still have to approve. So. If they create one, but.
Very.
I'm wondering if it would be, we could pass a moratorium right now for no use in public places, that type of stuff, which would protect us for the fair that's coming up in August. So if we could do something like that today to help, no, we can't do it today. Is
I'm
it
guessing you need to do
public hearing?
ordinance.
Mhm.
Would require a public hearing and a notice period.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't just, so we, how are you gonna fast track that for the one we wanna handle, and how do we decide which one they wanna grab? Right away.
Well, if there's, I mean, if you have opinions on public use, or you want to fast track a discussion on public use, you can just say that today, and we could work to propose some draft or model public use limit ordinances and schedule a public hearing, and it would generate feedback that you would hear from your constituents, and you could, reach out to whoever you wanted, but that's probably a 45-day minimum turnaround.
It's too late to do it.
I'm not sure would apply to cities even, though, if we did it in county.
It's a priority, the public use.
I think
I do, yeah.
I do. I think, and especially with the kids getting ready to go back to school, you've got the schools, you've got the playgrounds, you've got, it's too late for the fair, but,
well, I think I'm gathering that we want to do something about public use. And so we could direct staff to come up with an idea. We're going to meet in a couple of weeks, then set a date for a public hearing and notice it, and we'd have it done in September probably. Is that reasonable?
You can do that.
Mr. Chair, I like your idea of utilizing Reese and Jeff, obviously, for that. That was a good idea.
Jeff, I'm sure there's other gray areas too that that we don't. So, yeah, please.
I think, we've got a lot of people sitting in the room, but a lot more expertise than I do on it, so I don't know.
Big thing.
It might not be a big deal with people that smoke
But they
marijuana since
can.
I was a child. They're still doing it and they're still alive, so.
All right, well, thank you. I think we've got enough direction to
Thanks.
keep moving forward.
All right. Thanks a lot, Reese.
Yeah, thank you.
Bless you.
Commissioner updates. Well, this is an easier one. The East Central Solid Waste Commission met last Monday, I guess, and our director, longtime director, Janelle Troop is, we've kind of known this, but she officially gave notice that she is going to go on a phased retirement, one of those PERA phased retirement. So we're happy with that, and we have an assistant executive director that will step into that place, into that position probably in January and assume those roles, and she will then become the assistant director in charge of probably finance and stuff to make sure we're doing that right. But I think we're in a good position. John, the assistant, has been there for a year. He knows landfills. He knows how to run landfills. He knows how to run transfer stations. He probably isn't as comfortable with filling out all the paperwork for MPCA and that stuff, but that can come. So we did have a presentation or a discussion with the people that own the generator that we captured a methane gas, which we need to capture. It runs and then we feed it into this big engine that produces power. And we had a good discussion with the representatives from SIMPA who own that generator about their commitment to the future and our commitment to the future. And we are committed to making sure we capture all the gas we can, and it's pure enough to burn in that engine. And so they have to do a bunch of do a reman on that engine, which they have to do every so many thousand hours. And so they wanted to have some commitment from us that we were committed to doing better with our gas, which we are. And so I think that's kind of exciting news for everybody. I think the thing that we all need to be aware of is in the month of June, that facility took in 11,500 tons of garbage. Wow. So do the math on that. Every ton is 2,000 pounds, and they took in 11,500 tons. That's 22 million pounds of garbage from our 5 little counties. That's I think the writing is on the wall that we can't continue to collect that much garbage in it. And it's up from, say, 9,000 2 or 3 years ago, 9,000 tons. So it continues to inch up. And I think we're all aware of that. We shop and come home with sacks of stuff that is packaged in numerous packages, and the Amazon truck keeps coming and it's all in a package. And so it's I don't know. I think we can do better. Maybe that's a legislative idea we need to come up with of how we can reduce the amount of packaging that we get. I know there's a lot of reasons for packaging to cut down on theft and such, but anyway. Negotiations, I think, are we going to cover that later in a book session? So skip that. the Northeast Minnesota Area Transportation Partnership, we had a meeting the other day. Much like the cannabis rule. I think there's, in the transportation budget, there is volumes of stuff that got passed in legislation of where new money is coming from and what new money can be used for. And I think MnDOT just needs more time. We know there's more money coming to transportation. The question is that more money enough to keep up with inflationary cost of construction? And, you know, we know from our little projects in our counties, paving jobs and bridge replacements cost a lot more than they did 5 years ago. And so time will tell on that. Otherwise, we didn't get another $500,000 at this meeting, which was kind of disappointing because we hit 2 months in a row where we got $500,000 from them. So anyway, the Parks and Trails meeting was canceled, which was kind of a good thing because it was at the same time as the transportation meeting. Soil and Water, did they meet, JJ?
Yeah, they met on Wednesday. Pretty much just as usual there. I got a copy in the minutes. Anybody wants to see it. There's a new ag tech, Heather Donahoe. During public comment, just talked briefly about Iron Pine Solar. Everything seems to be moving ahead with that on the wetland delineations. And then first talk on the joint powers agreement with they want to our Soil and Water. There was a board member just showing his frustrations that it's not moving as fast as he would like. Seems like there's someone in Connecticut County that keeps bringing up some concerns. So
What's the joint powers agreement with who?
well, for the Snake one, Watershed one.
Snake River.
Yeah, Snake.
Snake or Kettle?
Yeah, Snake.
Snake, it's the JPA for the One Watershed, One Plan implementation.
And yeah, that was about it. August 9th.
Hey, JJ,
Next meeting. Yeah.
do we need to do anything? Can we do anything to help with that solar project?
Well, everything moved through with their delineation. So like when that solar company met with us, that I think really was probably the biggest obstacle is the size of it, of the project. It's all go through the state, right? We didn't really have much.
Right. We don't have much.
So if you think the county board can help
Oh, yeah,
do any stuff, bring it back to us.
absolutely.
I think that's a terrific project.
Yes, yeah, sure. Will do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Kettle River.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see.
We had our meeting, we were still going through our priorities for our goals and going through each, wetland, river, lake. The process for us. We hope to have that all done by September. The biggest thing coming at us is how we're gonna govern joint powers agreement, collaborative. So we're going through the priorities easy. It's a good group. They're very active. And engaged is probably a better word. So we're moving ahead, right on schedule. And the governing piece, I know Reese gave us one presentation once, and I think we're gonna come back to that. Kind of get refreshed, not to Reese, we'll go through the slideshow. I don't know where we're gonna end up, if it's gonna be a JPA or I would prefer a collaborative, I think, because we could always go to a JPA, but who knows? I'm wonderful. But I have another, if I could just do it now, Mr. Chair, would that be okay? Or do you want me to wait till?
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead.
We had our probation work group meeting yesterday, going over the legislative stuff that happened in the implementation process. So right out of the box, it says, we're gonna get a 150,000 base. It's in there plus the capitated rate, which is a number of cases they're handling that's based on that. So every county is gonna get more money. But some are gonna get prorated dollars, and there's Carly mentioned like 137,000 is where, I don't know what that was an average. She never went back to it. She's kind of moved through it. I tried to ask it later when I covered the fee thing, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Well, it was the whole group was there. So if I was gonna summarize the whole thing, the dollars still go to the DOC. And that representative was there talking. And then, of course, there's quite a few DOC counties out there that they handle everything for. We're a CPO and then there's a CCA. So he said this, he said, what we're working on right now is looking at all the budgets of the counties that we handle. And we're going to make sure our numbers are right to move forward. So it's like, they're going to get their dollars first. And then it's going to go out to the CCAs and CPOs. That's what it sounded like to me. That's just my interpretation of that, because that's the way he said it. So I don't think that's going to affect because the statute's pretty specific on how it gets distributed, but we'll wait and see on that. I want to make sure I don't forget any of them. Oh, yeah, the hard part is this statute is from 1919. And what the legislature did was it's a complete rewrite, just like this little one with cannabis. So there's a lot of stuff in there. So that's why you're hearing all these stories of what's going to happen and what's going to happen and what's going to happen. It's because it's all spelled out, but there's all kinds of interpretations that are going to happen. So, but we're looking good. And the grant dollars are still there. But in the end, the DOC guy said, he said, look at it like this. This is a huge investment for probation. And everybody's going to get it. And then what the state is mandating then are going to be reports back. And I talked to Terry about this already after the meeting. It says, yeah, we're well over that. So the reports back. So you're going to be measured. And the DOC is really good about if you're not meeting criteria, funding's gone. Here you do that with programs. Yeah, it was just gone because they weren't using it up. So that 10 grand was gone or 9,000. So, but he's aware of that, and we do a great job on probation already, and we have programs that a lot of counties have. So they'll figure that out. So I think we're sitting good. I don't know if I confused you more or what, but I'm just kind of flying off the top of my head.
That'd be nice.
And I think it's our last meeting. We're not going to meet again unless something happens.
That funding starts in January, right? I mean, it's for 2024. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Oh, I do want to say one more thing, because the fee thing. The whole group was there and I said, I got in and I said, for us. And I said, our probation is really good about waiving fees if they can't afford it and that kind of thing. And the dollars that we do collect pays a good portion of one of our agents' salaries. That's the way it works. So what's going to happen? Because I know our original plan was we're going to argue this before the sunset. And then Carly from AMC jumped in and said, there's 14 or whatever $1 million that's plugged into this that's going to be in lieu of the fees. So there's another little fund sitting there to be used to offset what counties would drop the fees. So we'll see how that happens.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah. Sorry I took so long.
Shaq.
Shaq, we talked a lot about the upcoming retreat and things that we're going to be doing there. And then I believe his name was Daniel Huff. He is he's the assistant, and his education is more on water quality. And so he talked a lot about wells and the city water and that type of stuff and what the state's doing to make sure that people have clean water. So, I mean, it was really interesting to hear what he had to say, and we'll see how they work it out.
All right, extension.
Yeah, we had a meeting at the new Discovery Garden in Pine City, which was pretty cool. Had a presentation on how it came about and how they built it and how they figured out what to do and everything there. So that was pretty neat. They just basically kind of talked about the fair coming up, was big on the agenda. We got a new person in there that took Roxanne's spot. And I guess she's working out really good and helping a ton. So they're very, I think this is one of the first times in a while they're actually excited for the fair, and I think they have some adequate staff. And Sarah's been around for a few years now, or a year, what is it, year and a half?
Yeah.
So, but hopefully there'll be no hitches, knock on wood, but that was about it. I had to leave a little early, so I missed some of it, but we did do our budget, which is real similar to last year. It looks higher, but we just moved some stuff from the county to that budget. So that's about it. I don't know, Dave, did you want to add any?
No, I think you covered it. Thank you.
Chemical Health Coalition.
I'm gonna do another while I do chemical health. So I sat in on an opioid training that was talking about what we can do to make things better for our areas. And one of the things that we talked about, and I brought it up in Chemical Health Coalition, is that there's an 8-week training session that's coming up. And it sounds like it's going to be an intense training. And we have an employee that's already interested in taking it, which is going to be really good. It's one way to bring our county better in helping people with recovery, and to maybe educate our people better, just to get that information that's national on how we can help. And one of the things that they talked about is the amount of fentanyl pills that were seized last year were enough to kill every person in the United States of America. That's just the seized fentanyl that came into this country. That's not including what was not seized. So we have a problem. And I was sitting in a hospital with a nurse at the time, and I said, "Oh my gosh, look at this." And there was a picture of an oxycodone pill that you get at the pharmacy, and then a picture of a man-made oxycodone pill that was filled with fentanyl, and they're identical. So, I mean, it's scary what's out there, and how people, the majority of overdoses that are happening right now are because people are thinking that they're just going to buy that little high that they get from oxycodone, but instead they're getting the man-made stuff, and they're dying because they're getting a lot of fentanyl in there. So one of the things that they talked about is we need to have Narcan, but a lot of the drugs that are coming out aren't handled with Narcan anymore. So we really need to have fentanyl strips available for people too. So I think they're talking about how that's probably even more important at this point, because the fentanyl that's coming in. I forgot my notes at home, to be honest. So Reese, can you think of anything else that?
No, I think
Becky?
What's a fentanyl strip?
There's strips that you can put on your pills and see if there's fentanyl laced in them, because there's so many man-made things that are coming out now. So it's, if I wanted to get high and I bought some oxycodone on the street, I'd be able to have that fentanyl strip, and I'd be able to test it before I took it to make sure if it was something that I really wanted to put into my system. So more information is going to be coming out on that 8-week course, and we'll find out more about that and if there's a fee and all of that kind of stuff. I think it was supposed to come out yesterday, and I haven't gotten anything on it yet. So we'll keep an eye on that and see if we can get Adrian in there. That would be good.
Okay, Lakes and Pines. We met yesterday. We go through a lot of grants, because Lakes and Pines, that's how they survive. They survive on grants. Becky was on that committee and knows that you spend most of your time approving the grants, so they can continue to do their cold weather housing thing and the homelessness thing and the blah, blah, blah. But the one thing that seems to be clear to me from the federal budget on down, there is less money that's available for senior citizen programs. The chore giver programs, the caregiver programs, all of those types of programs. So they've actually put a hold on some of those programs right now because they do not know for sure if the funding is available, and they can't pay the people if they don't have money because they don't have extra money to keep paying the people. So the people, I don't know if you got any better story than that, Becky, but I think it's something, if you hear of some of those programs that people used to have somebody that came and helped them set up their medication or help them clean their house or something like that. Those are called chore giver programs. And that money is not coming through the system.
That's hard. There's. a lot
Yeah,
of people-
it is hard, and it's hard for a guy like me to understand because the whole system is set up to help people stay in their home at a lower cost than if they went to. The alternative is if they can't take care of themselves, they got to go to a facility that takes care of them. Like, and then if they run out of money, then we have to pay. So it seems like a no-brainer to me to keep people in their own home, but I'm not the decider, and I'm just the bearer of those bad news. But anyway, Thursday we have a meeting with the Central Minnesota Council on Aging, and maybe I'll get a little better explanation of how, if there's hope that money, we've seen it coming for a while. They've been tightening the belt on senior congregate dining and home delivered meal funding, because that cost per meal keeps going up just due to inflation, but the amount of money that they give out to provide those meals either has stayed the same or gone down. So the people that are in nutritional need are getting less and less help.
Are they doing restrictions too on what your facilities are? Because Becky Lowry was concerned because they do a lot of food up in their
Yep.
area.
And they've had to cut back an amount of kitchens because they don't have the money. They can't do it anymore. So that it's a result of not, the Older American Act dollars are not as prevalent as it could be.
And we need it more now because there's more older adults.
And there's another thing in the whole distribution of it is the metro area, it's because of their they're the most populated. They got more than half the population of the state, so they get more than half the money. But they can do meals a lot cheaper because they got 800 people that they're feeding out of this kitchen. We might have 805 counties. And so just to distribute those meals, it costs more money for us to put the program together.
Becky, is there any way to find out approximately how many senior homes are taken care of with, like the cleaning or the drug medication setups, that type of stuff that are utilized in Pine County? So Steve could use that in his upcoming meeting.
I get those
You get that?
numbers.
Yeah, because
it's not
keeping so many people at home.
It's not like hundreds, but the 64 people or whatever that took care of that program, that's 64 families that are affected.
Right.
And if they're proud people, and if they're out of money, they're out of money. They can't afford to hire somebody.
Just think of the people that are able to stay home because they have that assistance.
Right. So that's why we continue to fight for those people that can't do it themselves. Any others?
I got a couple other others.
Yeah.
So Central Minnesota Jobs and Training, we've got a couple activities that are coming up that people can join in. And one of them is suicide prevention. There's going to be a wellness fair and it's September 22nd from 9 to 11. And it's for anybody who wants to go. If you've got Jeff, thinking of your deputies, if any of them want to learn more about suicide prevention and how to help people that are in that mode, this would be a good training for them. Becky thinks that she's got some from Human Services that would be interested in going. So it would be just a nice way to learn some things. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's from Wright County. That's going to be the presenter of that. And then there's a artificial intelligence one that's going to be coming up. I want to say that one's in January to see where things are going with that also. Then also with the solar plant, they had asked, we were talking, there's another big solar plant going in down in the metro area. And I brought up that we were going to be having one coming up in Pine County. And they asked for information because they've been training people in the technical skills that they believe, will be able to help them with this, getting it going faster maybe. And then they're up in this area, so then they wouldn't have to travel all over. They could maybe work in their own community. So that would be a good asset too. And then the other that I have is we had 2 library meetings within the last couple of weeks, and they were both for the budget. And right now where we're standing is an increase of 3.94%. And the majority of that is for salaries. I mentioned before that we went out to Bjorkland for a comp study. And that's for the majority of it, I think, is going to end up going, and some vehicle replacement, that type of stuff that we put on hold for quite a while. So that's my others.
All right. And there's no others, then we'll look at our upcoming meetings. And we'll move on to land and zoning.
For labor negotiations.
What are we gonna do with land and zoning? Why did I write down?
Oh, that was just a meeting that
Oh.
was not listed in the calendar.
Oh. All right. Then we will take a 5-minute break before we go into the closed session for labor negotiations.
We just gonna do it here?
Yeah, we'll do it right here.
Yeah, hand. Jackie said about the update on how many correctional officers.
Quorum, you just can't talk about it. But you know, quorum, you just can't talk about it. Only related.
No, we can close by statute. but-
Doing farm family.
We can talk about it.
Did you read on that?
Bump into each other. So we don't bump into each other. There by act.
Ready?
We don't have to run.
Yes, if you want to reconvene and then.
We're gonna come back from our break and we are going to, portion of the meeting will be closed pursuant to, statute 13D.03. If somebody wants to make a motion that we go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore, that we go into closed session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
there.
Any other business? Do we want to?
I would make a motion, for David's performance review, move him to the top of the scale. You need a number for that, or?
Yes, and that number is 1,000, or excuse me, 155,000,
That's my motion.
which is a $1,034 raise.
Motion by Moore, second by Ludwig to move Administrator David Menke to the top of our scale is 155. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any other business? If not,